We're here with our friend Ben Shapiro. Ben, how are you, my friend?
Hey, thank God. Doing well. How are you, Mark?
Good, good. Me too. Ben, as everybody knows, really doesn't need an introduction. One of the great podcasters in the country. One of the top conservative podcasters out there. You've written a great book here, and it's really a very, very interesting book, Lions and Scavengers, The True Story of America. And you use the lion and scavenger analysis. And it really does work. Tell the audience what you mean by a lion and a scavenger and why you decided to use them.
Sure. So lions are people who seek to build, who believe they have a duty in the world. And when they see a problem, they address it and they take primary responsibility for fixing it. They're the people who are out there fighting on the front lines. They're the people who are building the social fabric. They're the people who are innovators and risk takers. Those are the people who are building things. Then there are the scavengers who don't produce anything themselves and who resent the dominance of the lions. And as failures, largely, they believe that it's their responsibility to tear down everything good, to try and kill the lions, to take domination. And it doesn't matter if everybody suffers as a result. But the most important thing is that the important things in our society be destroyed, that they be laid low. And there's a coalition of scavengers right now threatening the West, and you can see it on college campuses. You can see it in these giant pro-Hamas marches in London. You can see it in the BLM defund the police marches. It really does threaten all of our civilization from the inside.
So the lions are patriots, and the scavengers are these phony revolutionaries, whether they be Marxists or Islamists or whatever they are. And what is it about the lions who are so strong, so optimistic, builders, developers, as you say, taking on the problems? What is it about them, and you indicate this in your book too, that at times makes them vulnerable to the scavengers?
So I think one of the most amazing things about Western civilization is the fact that biblically we're what you call a guilt civilization. We're a civilization where we look internally, we try to find our sins, and then to make reparation for those sins. This is what repentance is all about. This is what good people do in a Western society. The scavengers are representatives of what we would call shame cultures. These are cultures where it's very important to make other people lose face and never to lose face yourself. So what lions do when they are confronted with a flaw is they immediately admit the flaw, and this is seen as a good thing. The problem is that the scavengers are waiting. They're waiting to pounce and to claw at the neck of the lions when the lions say, yes, I've made a mistake. And this is why there's this bizarre dynamic that has emerged across the West where lions, powerful civilizations will say, sure, we sinned when we did this and we're very sorry for that and we want to fix that. And people will use that as an excuse to tear down the entire civilization. So you'll say, yes, slavery was bad, but America was founded in freedom. And the scavenger will say, well, you said slavery was bad because America was founded on slavery. And actually, you are a beneficiary of slavery, and all of America is built on slavery. So the very fact that the lions wish to correct the problem and acknowledge guilt is used by the shame-seeking scavengers to destroy them.
It is a really great point. When we played a clip or saw a clip of Talib on Labor Day going on and on about how the United States was founded in genocide and slavery. Exactly the type of person you're talking about, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And you saw this at this insane, ridiculous anti-American summit in Detroit. It was people who I call barbarians in the book. The scavengers are really three groups: the barbarians, looters, and lechers. Barbarians are people from the outside who say that America is responsible for all the world's sins, for suffering and terrible things all over the world. Then they come to our civilization. They live high on the hog and talk about how terrible it is. It's like Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and company. And you have the looters, who are essentially Marxists, people who believe that success is an indicator of exploitation and that people who are rich need to be torn down to the ground. And more importantly, private property and free markets have to be torn down. And then there are the lechers, people who believe that their personal proclivities have to take precedence over family and church. Well, what you see in people like Tlaib is this outsider mentality about America, that America is uniquely terrible, uniquely awful, uniquely evil, and therefore it ought to be laid low. And they say it out loud, knowing that many lions are too weak or too cowardly or just, frankly, too spineless to stand up on their hind legs and say, no, you do not get to label our civilization that way. You are the great beneficiaries of the greatest civilization in human history.
America needs patriots who know our founding principles and who can stand by those principles today. That's why the Heritage Foundation created the Heritage Academy, to prepare conservatives like you with the additional knowledge needed to stand firm in your beliefs in a world far too often unwelcoming to conservatives. All Heritage Academy fellows learn from the country's leading experts through policy lectures and live Q&A sessions. Speakers include Victor Davis Hanson, Mark Morgan, Dr. Kevin Roberts, and many more. Fellows also interact with other conservatives across the country in one of three tracks: high school track, college track, or the professionals and patriots track. I wish every American could join this 8-week online fellowship. But the next round of applications close on September 21. So please go to heritage.org/Levin to apply today. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Join the Heritage Academy to help restore America. Learn more at heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation. Let me ask you this. What do you make? You and I deal with Republicans or so-called conservatives who always want to cut deals with these people who are really trying to undermine those who are on the front lines. I understand this, there's sins and mistakes, and they want to make them right. But when they look at history, even modern history, do they recognize that these scavengers are out to destroy them?
I don't think they do. I think that they are operating, many of them, to try and, steel man them. I think many of them are operating from an old premise, which was that people on the other side of the aisle are not actually scavengers. They're just people who disagree with you. And I think that's wrong. I think that the apologetic nature of many Republicans, many conservatives, has led them to this bizarre belief that if they show that they are sorry for things that they've done, that somehow this will allow for agreement or conciliation. And that's not what's being sought at all. One of the things I talk about in the book is this group chat that I've been a part of that has an enormous number of very, very rich and powerful people on it. And during the last election cycle, one of the things that came up was this idea of the marginal tax rate. And there was a bunch of billionaires on there saying, well, I'd be willing to give up this, and I'd be willing to give up more, and really, we should give up more. And one of the things I said to them is, well, you understand that no matter how much you give up, that is not the goal. The goal is not for you to pay a slightly higher marginal tax rate. The goal is to destroy you. I mean, Bernie Sanders is saying this out loud. Kamala Harris has said similar things. What exactly is it that you're doing here? But this sort of misbegotten guilt complex, again, leaves lions and people who normally are innovative and risk-taking and building vulnerable to their own stupidity.
This book is fantastic by Ben Shapiro. All his books are Lions and Scavengers, The True Story of America. Who's winning right now, the Lions or the Scavengers?
I think that the Lions are winning. I think that the last election cycle was proof of that, but I think it can be lost at any moment. And I also think one of the things I talk about in the book is the idea that in every human heart, there's a lion and a scavenger. This is like an individual battle that we all have to fight every day because we all have problems in our life. Do we decide to get up and try and solve those problems ourselves, or do we blame systems, shadowy conspiracies that lie behind the scenes? And so things can turn very quickly. And we do live in a time with social media and a lot of corrupt politicians that the grievance mongering can really overtake the optimism, innovation, and upward looking mobility that really characterizes Americanism. They turn away from the American dream toward this vast and ugly pessimism that says that no matter how hard you try, you're always going to fail. I think that mentality is spreading like wildfire on the left. I think it's really taken over nearly the entire left. I also think there's a corner of the right that has adopted a lot of these same tactics and these sort of grievance-based coalitional political positions. And if that grows on the right as well as the left, then that really does spell kind of the end of the country.
You call this in the book on page 139, which is how far I got yesterday when I got the book, and I underlined it, a reactionary manosphere. Conspiracy theories has emerged on the right to match the transgressive lechery of the left. That's your point, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, in that particular section, I'm talking about the sort of Andrew Tate right that doesn't make the argument that men should be men or should be traditionally masculine, defending, protecting, taking care of family, building, that men are actually best served if they treat women like trash, if they act like irresponsible teenagers, that there's nothing to be done for it anyway. Basically, all of society is corrupt, so you may as well harm as many people as possible in the name of your aggressive instinct. And that certainly exists on the very online right. And I think you see it politically in part of the part of the political right that basically argues that there's some sort of shadowy conspiracy theory that lies behind our foreign policy or lies behind our economic policy or that's manipulating President Trump. It's a bunch of horse crap. And the people who are preaching it are saying something no different than you would hear out of the mouth of an AOC or Rashida Tlaib.
Mm-hmm. It is they who want Trump to be what they are, and Trump doesn't want to be and is not what they are. The book is Lions and Scavengers, The True Story of America. You can get it on Amazon.com right now. It is discounted by 30%, and that's what happens when a new book is hot. They try and move it. It's quantity. Over at Amazon, you can get it in any major bookstore like Barnes & Noble and so forth. As a matter of fact, I was in a Barnes & Noble doing a signing, and I saw your book, which is prominently displayed. It's a great book. What do you make of the fact, and you can apply this to your book, I'm sure, what do you make of the fact, I was thinking about this, the women's groups are utterly silent in the face of Islamism, in the face of what you call this manosphere type of mentality? What is with that?
Well, I think that this is the true benefit of being a scavenger. You don't have to have an actual ideology of the thing you want to build. It's just about getting together with other people to tear something down. So the most obvious example of this is Queers for Palestine. Right? You see people on college campuses who are marching in solidarity with Hamas who would immediately be thrown off the top of a building in the Gaza Strip. And everybody is sort of bewildered by this. How could this be? Why are feminists marching in solidarity with radical Muslims? And the answer is they have nothing in common except one thing, which is they really, really hate the civilization. They believe that our civilization is, in the case of feminists, patriarchal and sexist. In the case of Islamists, it is westernized and biblical. In the case of Marxists, it's too free market. And it doesn't matter that there are disagreements between those various groups about pretty much everything. The thing that matters is they can get together under a wide variety of banners and march against the civilization. They can all get together to tear away at the thing. They don't want to build anything. The whole goal is to just rip down. And if you just want to rip things down, it really doesn't matter who shows up to the riot as long as somebody brings an axe and somebody brings a match.
This is such a great book, folks. I'm telling you, Lions and Scavengers, The True Story of America. And it's not just an explanation of what's going on. You're encouraging people to be lions, right?
Well, that's really the key. The key is that we can all do this in our personal life, right? We can all make decisions on a day-to-day level in which we take more responsibility, in which we look at the problems in our lives and make the decision to be active in our own lives, in which we forcibly fight the instinct in all of us to buy into this kind of giant conspiracy theory in which we are a victim. And one of the metaphors that I use in the book and that I talk about a lot is the Cain and Abel story from Genesis. The basic story of Cain and Abel is very simple. Cain makes a sacrifice, Abel makes a sacrifice, God accepts Abel's sacrifice, he rejects Cain's. And then what comes next is that God tells Cain, he gives him a sort of picker-upper speech. He says, sin is at your door. Sin crouches at your door, but you can overcome it. Right? You can learn from Abel, or you can do something truly terrible. And Cain makes the decision to blame Abel for his own problem. Instead of trying to fix it, he decides that he's going to blame Abel. He kills Abel. And of course, then he has to go into exile. The point that the Bible is making there is that in a God-centered or rational or understandable universe, acting well makes your life better. Acting poorly makes your life worse. And you can blame it on whoever you want. But, the things that require doing are going to require doing whether you do them or not. And if you choose not to do them and instead you choose this kind of quixotic quest to tear down the very things that have made us all prosperous and free, well, you're going to end up with a much, much worse world. And your life is not going to be any better in the process.
And you spend a lot of time in the book weaving God and morality and family throughout the book, don't you?
I think it's the most important thing. Because, again, I think that in order for us all to truly be lions, we have to acknowledge that there is an order to the universe. And whether we do that consciously or unconsciously, we act in the universe in that way. We act in the world as though there is a cause and effect. We act in a way that suggests that we have free will and that our choices actually matter. And so making sure that that's true, believing that's true, that there is a moral, there is a right and wrong, that we're not relativists, that lies at the core of everything. And if you turn into a relativist, then in the end, what you're really doing is leveling everything.
You're going to love this book, folks. I love it. I just got it yesterday, and I started plowing through it very, very quickly. It's a very easy read, and yet it's filled with very important information and ideas that I think you're going to really appreciate. It's called Lions and Scavengers, The True Story of America. You can get it at Amazon.com right now, 30% off. I encourage you to do it. Last question, Ben. What caused you to write this book? I get this question all the time. What was it? Is this something you'd been thinking about over time, or what?
I mean, this book was different for me. Usually I come up with sort of a concept for a book, and then I research it, and then I write it in a fairly short period of time. This one was written over the course of a couple of years, and so there really are almost these travelogue entries where I'm writing from different times in different places. The real initiating event was right after October 7th. I went to do a debate at Oxford University over in Britain, and I was told by my security team I couldn't stay in London because it was too dangerous because of all the pro-Hamas protests. And as I was at Oxford University, one of the great historic institutions of the West, blocks away from where Richard Lionheart was crowned, and a history university that goes back 1,000 years, I was recognizing that the people who were yelling at me outside and inside in a fairly dangerous way were screaming on behalf of the belief that this institution, which they were attending and which they were enjoying the beneficence of, that institution ought to be torn to the ground, and that the things it stands for ought to be torn to the ground. And this really, created such enormous, upset and angst that I felt I really had to sit with it and write about it and try and condense what it was that was happening into, something simple to digest and understand and internalize.
Well, we have to leave. We could have done this for hours, you and I. I think the audience would have enjoyed it too. The book is Lions and Scavengers, The True Story of America. You're going to love this book. You can get it on Amazon.com. It'll show up tomorrow. Any major bookstore, Barnes & Noble, all the rest of them. I want to congratulate you. Great book, my friend.
Thank you so much, as always, Mark.
All right, you take care of yourself.